And so something you were saying that I wanted to grab onto. Um, and so undergrad, we have nursing in common. And then for grad school, I went to public health.
Hmm.
And for public health, you may or may not be with people from a clinical background. Chances are you are, but you also may not be. And
Hmm.
so that diversity in background and that diversity in approach to a problem, to a health problem, but you have people who aren't a nurse or doctor or dentist in it with you posed another challenge. And it was just kind of like, okay,
Yep.
I figured out how to be with clinical people in a clinical setting. And now I'm in the community, I'm doing public health with people who weren't necessarily trained like me, don't really think like me. And so,
Yep.
how do you collaborate, coordinate, and get things together? And what I can say now that I didn't see then is that I wasn't centered at all. I was just kind of reactive and flying into things and jumping into things. And I believe that when I started doing meditation and yoga,
Hmm.
is when I learned to have the space to like, okay, something would happen. And I'd be like, okay, breathe. You don't have to know the
Hmm.
answer. You don't have to jump right in. Just
Yeah.
take a moment and figure out what the best thing is. But those practices, and that to me was the beginning of spiritual practices, what
Hmm.
gave me the space to stop rescuing, to stop jumping, to stop solving, to stop
Right.
fixing, and be like, if you keep doing this, you're gonna burn yourself out. Like there has to be something filling you back up so that you can continue to move forward. But that was a learning process. And for me, that was the spiritual part of the journey.
Um, so I think for me, I always grew up in the church. So I've always had like spiritual grounding. Because even in school, like I went to I have a very complicated Christian experience. So I was baptized as Catholic because that's what my mom and my mom's family is. But my dad is Baptist, and um, they're actually African Methodist Episcopal AME. So, and that actually is different. That's different from Baptist, which I didn't understand, but going to different churches with different family members, I quickly kind of figured out, oh, this looks a little bit different from the other church. But having all those diverse experiences was really actually good because I had so many questions. And so it was like, what Catholicism didn't answer, AME had an answer to, and what they didn't have an answer to, the Southern Baptists had an answer
Oh,
to. So
wow.
it was very interesting to kind of like watch it evolve over time. And then when I ended up becoming, when I went to college and everyone was like, okay, it's time for you to like go to church and make sure you're, keeping your spiritual person fed. I had to make a decision like, well, where am I going to go? Because throughout my childhood, I've gone to a number of different churches and they were all different experiences. And I ended up choosing a non denominational church when it was
Mhm,
all said and done,
mhm.
because I liked how it still brought in all the things that I had been accustomed to growing up. um, but saying that to say, at some point, I realized that that still wasn't enough. Like, I
Mm.
still had more questions. It still wasn't getting at some of the things that I was struggling with, like what you're describing. That seems like that should easily be corrected by, praying or going to, Bible study or something, but it still wasn't because I was still struggling in school. I was still having to fight with administration. As I got further in my career, um burnout was like major. I'm like, what am I going to do? I can't like keep feeling this way. So if I was working nights and I rotated to days because I was like, well, maybe I just need to get my circadian clock together. And if I'm working during the daytime with normal people, I won't feel like such a vampire. But that still didn't work. And I ended up having more work with day shifts. So it was a different level of intensity. And so that's when I realized, okay, I'm missing something, because in my conversations with family, um, their response was very reactive. And I'm like, that's not gonna help get me like where I need to be. Like, that's not the best response. So trying to navigate, who do I need to talk to help me figure
Yeah.
these things out, to make smart decisions and not just, go in there like a bull in a china shop. Um, yeah, that is the point at which I realized, like, maybe I need something else. But what that something else was, it took me a while to figure out that it was therapy, that was the space to kind of sort some of that out.
Something that you said, the bull in the china shop, that your family were activists
Mm.
in a good way, in a positive way. My family was involved in the community,
Mhm,
but um, so my parents came into their 20s in the 60s. And so
mhm,
they came into adulthood in the 60s. And so all of that women's liberation was happening at the same time. Black is beautiful, civil rights. So there was a lot of fight in my parents, a lot of fight the establishment, don't let
yep,
them tell you, stand up for yourself. So that's the energy that they parented with.
yes.
And so I took on the fight. I didn't know what I was fighting about or who I was supposed to be fighting, but I knew I was supposed to fight. And so it's
That's right,
like
that's right.
that's all I was doing was just fighting everybody. And so I think for me, a huge part of it was to kind of calm down. What
Mhm,
are you upset about?
right,
What is it that you want to change? And how can you communicate that in a way that you're not provoking the person in front of you to attack you back? Like, I think I just had to calm down enough. I'm glad I came from a family of fighters. I appreciate that.
yeah,
But it was how to use it in a way that was appropriate for what I was dealing with and what was going on. And so that was the combination for me of therapy and spiritual work and working with either EAP or the ombudsman at work was how to kind of funnel all of that energy and all that information into something productive and useful
right.
and not just fighting to be fighting.
Yeah, yeah, I think that is a powerful statement, because it is putting the tools in the toolbox. And it's funny that I didn't really grasp that concept until grad school, like the second iteration of grad school, because even in my second program, I still was having that same fight, but it wasn't until I got to pit, like you said, with working with people not in my field. Even though I was in school of nursing, I was still working with people who were not germane to nursing. Like, um, they operated more in other spaces, medicine, bench science, all of these spaces that I was not familiar with. So um, it was an eye-opening experience to see how they do things. And that's where I kind of learned that, collecting tools for your toolbox. And I was like, well, not just my like school toolbox, but the life toolbox. And um it was there that I first learned about like the EAP program. And I was like, oh, because then when I had to use it, I'm like, well, now why have I not used this all along? Did I? But there was not ever a reason, that I thought maybe was big enough, or I just didn't think that that was for me. And so that is, in fact, a tool that we can use. And I think we probably need to do a better job of like putting it out there for people to understand how it works and how you can benefit from it.
Well, that's why I wanted to record our conversation. We end up talking about this a lot in a lot of different ways. And it's just kind of like, I wish somebody had told me.
Yeah.
I wish I wasn't just bumbling around finding stuff. Like, thank goodness I did. And I found really good resources that were helpful. But
Mhm.
what I regret or wish could have gone different, it was just kind of like, just go to college and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
And I wasn't fine. And so then it was like we're saying, so you get out into the workplace or even in your life away from home and family, and it's just kind of like, I don't know how to manage this. That there are resources, that there are tools, that there are books and classes and groups that you can go to learn. I like how you're saying tools in the toolkit that just my family didn't need where they were in their life, but where I was, I needed them. And so I wasn't going to get them from family, but I had to find other resources, make use of, be open to, find, and then make use of the resources that I found without, I want to say without shame, guilt or shame. Like, you're an intelligent girl, you should be able to figure that out or whatever. And it's just kind of like, but I can't. And so
Right.
I'm gonna go get some help. It's just something about having the permission
Mm-hmm.
to add to my toolbox and not believe that I just had to make do for the rest of my life with
Yeah.
what my family was able to put in my box. And it's just kind of like that, offering the next generation or other people that freedom. Like if you didn't get it,
Right.
there are ways to get it. And aren't you obligated to yourself to
Mhm.
do the work, to take the trainings, to find the guru, like whatever it is you need, because you do stretching. I get massages, but you do stretching. And so
Yes.
it's like do
Oh,
the
that's
body
awesome.
work, do the
Yep.
energy work, do whatever it is you need to that's supportive of
Mhm.
where you're going.
Right. Yeah, that is so true. And I feel like ever since I started tapping into these tools, I've been like telling people about them. Like, you should think about, I tell everyone they need therapy. I mean, that's just one of those things. But I think we all could stand to have someone external to us helping us like sort through and navigate some things. Because sometimes you don't know what you don't know. I mean, and that's part of the conversation that you and I often have is that you give me language for things that I don't often have language for. I'm like, I know it's a feeling or it's a thought, but I don't know how to label it or name it. And so I think even just being able to call it out for what it is even helpful because now your mind can like sort through it. Um, and so yeah, I think I want to say because I like what you said about giving permission. It was in college at Pitt. When I met someone, she was another faculty member, and she was telling me she had two therapists. She's like, I have a life therapist and a work therapist. And I was like, "What?"
Yeah, right.
Not in a judgmental way, but I just thought, wow, like you have so much insight to have someone to help you navigating these two spaces of life, which at the time, I was moving through my program was like super difficult. And I'm like, well, that makes sense. And then it was like right after that, I met another person who was like, yeah, I have a life coach, I have a therapist, I have a this. And he was like naming off all these people. And I'm like, oh, so this is a thing. Like, it's okay. And it gave me permission to like explore those spaces and say, I realize that I do need some additional help. So, how do I do that? And I think if we could make it more of a comfortable space, that
Yes.
we would find people, we give each other permission to seek those items.
And seeing it as self-care. I remember being in grad school, just struggling in New York, struggling. And I was seeing a therapist through school. I
Mhm.
had found a group that I felt comfortable with. We were doing some inner child work. I was doing reflexology. I had a nutritionist. I think I
Yeah.
had gone to a few OA meetings because I felt fat. I mean, it was just kind of like all kinds of things. Like I just had, and I remember in the back of my head thinking, how screwed up are you that you need all of this help? Like that was the judgment that
Yeah.
came through. And I
Yeah.
just had to, it doesn't matter. If I need 10, 20, 50 people,
Right.
right now I need help. And I over time started calling it my village.
Yeah.
And so I have even now, I have a core village that's small, like 5 people, 5 different people offering therapist, massage, acupuncture, chiropractor. I just have this small village. But when I go through crisis, it has to expand. And
Right.
I start pulling people out from, everywhere. And it's just kind of like something ain't right. I need I need ombudsman. I need somebody else.
Right.
It's just kind of like
Right.
to give myself permission to expand and contract
Mhm.
based upon what I'm going through and how well I'm coping,
Yeah.
instead of you should be able to handle this. You should be able to figure this out. You shouldn't need this much help. I really judged myself negatively, even as I was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
judge myself negatively until I realized, but I feel better. I get through things quicker and I
Mm-hmm.
get through things without a lot of residual when
Right.
I just ask for help, when I get a life coach, or when whatever it is that I need in that moment. Right now, I have a social media manager, to help me with my business. It's like, what is wrong
Yeah.
with getting help when you need, like, how come that's such a negative thing?
That is so good. And I can't remember what book I was reading, but I want to say it was like I don't know, someone's autobiography. I just can't remember who. But it was very gosh, that's gonna bother me now who that was. But whoever they were pretty like up there in terms of, high power, like type of person. But that was one thing that they always spoke about is like knowing when you need help and then actually reaching out and doing it, because there are things that can be delegated and there are things that you can, outsource. And it's like the more that you can open yourself up to other people helping you, the better you can like be at whatever it is that you're trying to do. And so that was another like thumbs up or a pass to say it's okay that you need help, and whatever your level of help is not really the point. It's that you're seeking the help that you need. um and like you, I've struggled with those same kinds of like, gosh, like, do I really need this much help? um I call it my personal board of directors, although I like
Oh,
village. I do have like, and that's more so in a workspace. Like I don't know that I have a name for the people in my like inner circle, but yeah, at work I definitely have a personal board of directors. These are the mentors, the sponsors, the coaches, the people who make it all happen. And so there's different people that I go to for different needs. And I think I learned that early on from an earlier mentor who was like, you're not going to get it all from me. So
mm.
you should be looking for other people to fill in those spaces that I don't fill. And I think her having that very honest, upfront conversation with me, like, made a world of difference because I did just that. And now I very purposefully do that in everything. So whatever aspect of my life where I'm looking at things, I'm like, what is it that I need and how can I fill that need? Be it, whatever.
That's interesting to me. I feel like we've gone complete full circle. Something about how you were saying that about reaching out to others for help made me think about being a latchkey kid. The thing that I took pride in is that I didn't need help from anybody. Like I
Mm-hmm.
took a lot of pride in my independence. And like you, I started working at a job early that I had enough money to buy a car
Mm-hmm.
and then enough money to move out and get an apartment at 18. And so again, thinking I'm grown, but it was the independence that
Right.
I don't need anybody. I can do it. I can make the money. I can figure it out,
Mm-hmm.
that I prided myself in.
Right.
And so now for the answer to be a village is the complete opposite of that. But it took that whole growth of recognizing, but you can't do it all. Or
Mm-hmm.
when you try to do it all, you burn out. Like, why not get help? Why not get help for the things you don't know how to do? Why not get help for the things you don't have time to do? It's just kind of like, what is this? I must do it all myself forever or die
Right.
mentality instead of, there's help for that. You can pay somebody to help you do that. It's just kind of, it doesn't have to always be you
Right.
doing everything for it to get done. Like that was a huge, that if there was an arc to my story, that was it. To recognize that I need help, to ask for help, and then to accept what help is given has been a
That
huge learning. Yeah.
that's the piece. I think for me is the accepting it when it comes. And I want to say that sometimes I feel like some of that has to do with just, cultural, generational things. Like we seen our parents and our parents' parents and their parents doing it all and all of these things, but it wasn't because they wanted to. It was because a lot of times they had to out of necessity. and somehow we like glorify that as like being
Right.
all, you know, woman or whatever. And I'm like, that's not real.
Right.
So
It's not sustainable. Even
no,
if you can juggle all those balls for a while, it's not sustainable.
mm-mm, no, nope. So yeah, I think that is the other piece, is that yes, once you find your village, is being comfortable and allowing yourself to be vulnerable enough to share with them and be willing to take what they say, you know, to help you do the things.